Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Highlands Astronomical Society's monthly meeting for November 2021. And a special welcome to any new members tonight. I hope you'll find the next hour or so entertaining and informative. The programme for tonight will be a talk followed by our club news and photos with Pauline Macrae. And as always, put your questions in the Q&A box and we'll try and attempt to answer them for you. Tonight we have as our speaker Mr. Eric Walker, our current chairman and endlessly enthusiastic amateur astronomer. He needs little introduction from me, except to say that Eric is the epitome of the practical observer, resourceful, dedicated and plain speaking. Tonight he will be guiding us through the story of how he came to build his own AllSky camera. He will tell us of his trials, tribulations and eventual success during this process, undertaken when the COVID restrictions prevailed. Some odd things may crop up in his talk, like Keograms, Henrietta the Spider and the Head Nebula, all of which I am unfamiliar with, but he will no doubt explain these mysteries in his own eloquent way. So take it away, Eric.
Okay, thank you very much for that introduction, Dave.
Yeah, well,
I'm sure you do know about Henrietta and co.
yeah, I do actually.
So
just
anyway.
building up a mystery for you.
Okay, well, here's the first night of related to practical astronomy. I've called it All Things, AllSky. Now, many of you will have seen images. You'll have seen the images that have been shown at previous meetings. But for those of you on Facebook and Instagram and other social media, you'll find that you've seen quite a lot of them. I hope my doggy barking in the background doesn't interfere with this. Okay, so the story tonight. So it's going to be about why build an AllSky camera at all and why did I in particular build one. I'll be spending quite a bit of time on the construction, the setup, the operation, and there was one essential modification, absolutely essential that if you're doing this for yourself, you'll need to do. I'll then explain what it can actually do for you, and I'm not going to go through all of these, but you'll be able to see stars and the Milky Way and satellites, even a potential UFO sighting. And then what's next on my project, the list after this. So why build an AllSky camera in the first place? Well, the AllSky camera, it can capture pictures of the whole sky, or nearly the whole sky, at predetermined intervals. It can do it throughout the night, and it can actually do it during the day. The AllSky camera, it's essential that, well, for me, it was automatic and it was remote operation. I didn't want to have to be sitting on top of it all the time. The images, they can be webcast, they can be made available for everyone to see or just a select audience. It's very, very useful for keeping an eye on the sky when you're doing other things. I sometimes have it up on my smart TV in the kitchen and just look and see what's going on. And for those of you who know how enthusiastic Lisa is, Lisa goes out and looks for aurora almost every night, and she will give you a WhatsApp alert and see whether it's actually really worth going outside to do some observing or setting up your camera to take some pictures. You can learn your constellations, your asterisms, your planets, a couple of bright deep sky objects, and you can see the movement of the night sky. It gives a great insight into the occurrence of meteors, fireballs, bright satellites, air traffic, lots of air traffic in this area. Also, it's actually probably just as well because we do get lots of clouds, but you can look at the development of clouds and its movement. Light pollution, you can see how light pollution varies through the night. And unfortunately, now, and this is becoming more and more prevalent, you can see visible air pollution. Last year, I was convinced that there was lots of haze, a lot of haze, and it was the mist from the River Connon that was causing my problems. I now realise it's the amount of solid fuel burners that are being installed, especially in these rural locations like Connon Bridge and Maryborough. And at certain times of the night, you can very clearly see when people are switching on or increasing the fuel load into their solid fuel burners. So that is going to be another thing that we might have to look at how we're going to manage and control. The other thing about building your own AllSky camera is cost. Buy versus build your own. There are actually not that many systems, and I'm talking about systems rather than just a camera. There's not many integrated systems available to buy off the shelf, and those that I have seen, they range from anything from £850 to £1,500 plus. So they're pretty expensive if you buy them, and they don't always do exactly what you want them to do. So why did I decide to build an AllSky camera? Well, last October 2020, I got absolutely hacked off with the COVID restrictions, the endless poor weather, the shortening days. I mean, that's not unusual for October or November. And I was getting, I always think I'm a pretty upbeat person, but I noticed that my mental outlook was worsening. I've always liked to challenge myself, both physically and mentally, and I do live by the adage, every day, do something that just scares you a little bit. This project, this AllSky project, it's actually been on the back burner in my mind for considerable time, and I'm talking about several years, but just one of those never get round to it jobs. And as one night I was just randomly browsing and I came across a website, and that just fanned those embers in my mind and ignited them into action. And it got me excited about a tricky little project that I think I could do. It's a doable project. That was the important one. It's doable. I thought it was doable for me. You do need to have basic, competent technical and construction skills. You need access to YouTube. YouTube, absolutely vital in doing this, showing you how to put things together. The ability to set up a Raspberry Pi little computer and install its operating system, and also the AllSky operating code. You need to be able to do that. A basic knowledge of coding. Or if you have access to someone who can actually do some coding, and I'm talking about secondary school pupil level coding here, and you need to do that in order to refine the AllSky operating code for your particular setup. I was also confident that I could incorporate my recently acquired 3D printing and design skills into helping me deliver this project. So all these things together, I thought, I am going to have a go at this. Now, this is the fella. This is the website. This is the fella, Thomas Jacquin from Canada. He built and documented the build of his wireless AllSky camera. These are links to various websites and coding repositories. I'm not going to go through them all, but you need to read all these, and that's where all the key stuff was that I needed. Or did I need to build it? Well, there's a whole heap of stuff here, and I'm not going to read through this list because a picture paints 1,000 words. So I'll take you through it in picture format. The key thing is you need an astro camera. And in this case, I believe it or not, I had a spare ZWO AC290 MC color camera sitting about. So I thought I'm going to put this to good use. I needed to purchase another lens. I needed a 1.5mm wide angle lens to give me the full wide angle that I needed to see the whole sky. The Raspberry Pi Now it has to be a Model 3B plus or newer. And that's it. It's a tiny little thing with a few USB ports and all kinds of things, the processor there. It has an SD card which plugs into the top. It's behind there, and that's got the operating system. It also stores all your image files and things like that. There is, in this picture, there's a USB stick there. You don't need that. That was when I was setting it all up and I was using a wireless mouse to help communicate with the whole device. You don't need that. On the other side, you need a thing called a power over Ethernet splitter. This brings, via an Ethernet cable, it brings power to the unit, and it also allows data to be transferred up and down to the onboard computer. That's the splitter that's on this camera device. In the house behind my main computer, I actually have a power over Ethernet injector, and that's what injects the internet, for want of a better word, into the system. You'll notice there's a mounting board, and I designed and printed that mounting board. So on one side I've got the computer, the other side I've got the power over Ethernet splitter, and on the top I have the camera. And of course you need a good old-fashioned USB cable to link the camera to the Pi. As it all comes together, you need a sturdy and weatherproof and waterproof enclosure. And I thought, well, you know what, drain pipes, they're in the ground, they don't leak, they're pretty hardy things. So off to B&Q, and I got these elements of a drain pipe, an actual coupling, and a couple of caps, waterproof caps, and I just drilled out or cut out holes and fitted things in them. The acrylic dome, that's essential. That has to be of optical quality. You get that off Amazon. There's a little 3D printed collar in there, and that's just to make things look nice, because my cutting wasn't that great into that plastic, but that's only for making it look good. And I did a 3D printed end cap there, and although you can't see it, there's actually a square hole on the other side, and that allows air to get in. My thinking was to keep the dew at bay. I would use as the computer's working, it generates heat, and I was thinking that by convection that'll take in air, that'll circulate through holes I had drilled in this, round inside of the dome, the camera lens, and I thought that'll keep the dew at bay. That didn't quite work out, as you'll see later on. Another important consideration is how on earth do you mount it. Some people mount it on top of a mast, some people put it on a TV aerial or a satellite dish type mast. I decided to design and print a roof mount, and it's actually screwed well into the concrete slate copes, and it's absolutely solidly fixed in there with these mounting screws. If you look at the underneath, you can see the Ethernet cable, which is going into the via the end cap, and then the whole assembly is all together. That then fits onto the top of the roof. You've got to orientate it properly. Now, for me, north is along the ridge of the house, so I made sure that I was maximising the north-south part of the sky I was capturing, and I didn't mind a little bit of the east and west edges being cut off. So that was my choice. Other people may have more interest in east-west or whatever orientation, and you would just choose to do that for yourself. But it's a very, very well mounted piece of kit. I mean, that's withstood gales and everything over the past year. No problems whatsoever. I did find that some of the streetlights, I was getting a little bit of glare off them, and off my neighbours, some of my neighbours' lights as well. So I built a lens hood. I designed and 3D printed a lens hood, and that just takes the glare off the camera lens and the dome, and It works great, absolutely fantastic. Now, the bit that I struggled a little bit with was the coding, the setup and operation of it. And I accessed Thomas Jacquin's open source software via the GitHub sites. I installed it. It enables the images to be taken 24/7 and it can display them live. The user, me, I can adjust several key parameters such as the time of exposure, the gain, the red-blue balance, the contrast via gamma and brightness, things like that. So that can all be adjusted. You can set it up automatically to save the images. It does this, the nighttime images by default, but you can also save all the daytime images if you want to. I've tried this and it uses up an awful lot of memory. I'm lucky I've got 128 gig SD card in there, so it holds a lot, but it wouldn't take long even with that to eat up all the memory if you save the daytime images as well. You can transfer the stored images from the SD card on the Pi to your website. And it's also set up to automatically produce time-lapse videos, a star trail image, and a Keogram in the morning once all the nighttime image taken has been completed. As I said, I found it very tricky to modify the code I needed for my own location and setup, especially when I was trying to get it to talk to my website. I'd done Fortran and COBOL way back in 1974, I think it was. And the last time I'd done any programming was BASIC with an Amstrad CPC 6128. That's the program I had done. But this is coding. It's completely different. It's all about controlling machines and devices and getting them to talk to each other. Completely different to my experience. And I really found it tricky. There are user forums on GitHub. They helped. Very much they helped. But it can take some time for your problem to be attended to and addressed. It can be just a day, but it can be 3-4 weeks. So that wasn't any use to me. I'm an impatient chap, as most folk will know. So I found Thomas's direct contact details and I phoned him and got in touch with him in Canada, and he helped me directly and quickly. And that was so important to me. After learning all this, after doing all my modifications to the software and the coding, I realized a secondary school pupil could easily solve these coding issues. I just couldn't do it. I just have no experience of it, but it definitely isn't difficult if you have been taught the basics. And I'm sure most secondary school pupils will have been taught some basics nowadays. This is the type of user interface. So yes, you can go into the code and you can adjust all these key parameters, the code, but Thomas designed a user interface. Thank goodness he did. And it helped me. These are still look complicated, but they're not. And this is one where I can adjust the camera exposure settings. So you can adjust from 10 seconds to 40 seconds. You can adjust the gain. That's tied in with the sensor and the light sensitivity. The gamma and the brightness, that's tied in with the contrast to achieve the right contrast of the image. The red and blue balance, you can't do green, strange enough. You can muck about with the red and the blue to get the color balance reasonable, and all the image types and things. So this has to be done by trial and error, and this took quite a time. This took probably 2, 3, 4 weeks to get my head around, but at least I was able to do it. Another user interface that's available is this one, and this, you have to set this up to see whether you tell the device that I want to produce a time lapse at the end of the night. I want it to produce a Keogram, which I'll explain in a wee while, or a star trail. So you have to tell the machine, you have to tell the computer to do all these things. And as I say, this was alien to me, but I got the hang of it after a while. An interface I find very useful is the status of the thing. This is telling me how much memory I've used on my disk, so I make sure I set it up so that I try and keep it under 85% memory usage. It just seems to work better that way. The processor temperature on board, that runs, I like to run that anything from about 37, 38 up to 50. The Raspberry Pi, it will still operate well at 60. It will still operate well at 80 odd. It won't stop working. It just slows down. So you have to ensure it's staying cool. You can also monitor the camera sensor temperature, and that lets me know whether my cooling device is working well. So essential is running operating information there. This interface is very useful, especially when Lisa's saying, did you see that meteor? Did you see that fireball? And I can go in as the AllSky camera is capturing images. I can click on there and I can see the images it's captured so far tonight. And if Lisa says it was about 8:12 p.m. that I think I saw a fireball, I nip in there and I look at the images round about it and I can go, yes, it was, or no, it wasn't. So that's quite a useful little interface to have as well. And something I'm sure most people are looking for is, what was the final cost? Well, for my setup, all this came to a total of £530, which isn't a huge amount compared to what you can buy off the shelf. All the bits, the Raspberry Pi and things like that, all the computer stuff and the Ethernet links, that's not expensive at all. The key cost determinant is the camera and the quality and price of the camera that you decide to use on board. So in my case, 250 quid, that was about 50% of the cost. Now, there are website purchasing and running costs. They're a whole different story. That's a classic one where you start off thinking it's only going to cost you a few tens of pounds a year, and then you can add a zero on that. But that's another different story, and I'm not going to go into that tonight. But £530 is what that whole setup cost me. So very, very reasonable indeed. I mentioned that there was an essential major modification that had to be done. After I had been operating the AllSky camera for 4 months, probably nearer 5 throughout last winter, I noticed that the image had got really quite bad. Like, it wasn't crisp, it wasn't, the colours were a bit odd, and I couldn't work out what it was. So I went up on the roof and I took the thing apart, and lo and behold, there was dewing, there was moisture accumulating on the inside of the dome and on the lens surface. Not a lot, but enough to drop the performance of the camera. So the initial simple idea I had of using just the convected heat, heating up the air coming in, so the convected heat from the Pi processor and heating up the air to prevent the dew formation, that didn't work. It didn't work. So I went, how on earth am I going to solve this one? So a little bit of creativity, a little bit of innovation, and a bit of internet searching, and I found you can get onboard cooling fans attached to a control board for the Raspberry Pi. And it's not an expensive thing. What did I say? I can't remember what it was, about 10 or something. It wasn't a lot of money at all. So that allows you to suck and blow air over the processing unit. The control board allows you to program it so that it increases speed the hotter it gets. You know, it ensures that your actual computer processor doesn't overheat in the summer, because that's another problem. In the winter, it's not difficult to keep it cool, but in the summer it is. So I was killing two birds with one stone here. What I also had to do was I had to modify the 3D printed mount that the camera and everything was set up on. So with the fan that could now draw in cold outside air. So that's drawn in by the onboard Raspberry Pi fan. That ensures, as I say, that the Raspberry Pi processor stays within its operating working temperature range. The warm exhaust air from the Raspberry Pi, that then enters this hollow chamber in here, and that is then diverted through a duct. Now that duct is fastened quite firmly to this assembly. So that warm air then goes up through a hole in the top of the casing, and it's blown inside and around the camera lens and dome. The temperature and movement of that drier air ensures that no dew at all forms on the camera lens or the dome internals. It also keeps the acrylic dome a little bit warm, so when moisture or rain or light snow accumulates on the outside of the dome, it's actually enough to melt it to get rid of it. So there's actually a little extra benefit there. And at the end of it, once the air has passed in and around the dome and the lens, it's then exhausted outside to atmosphere. This is just a little animation to show you the structure of this mountain board and the air duct in a bit more detail. So you can see the exhaust duct from the Raspberry Pi goes into the chamber. Air comes up through this duct and into the inside of the dome and over the air. So I was really, really chuffed with this solution. Did it work? Well, this is it. This is it modified. It's mounted on top of my roof again. There's the cold air intake. So the fan is drawing air in from outside. Gets heated up by the computer processor up through the inside of the dome and over the camera lens, and then out, down through the outside and exhausted to the air. It was 100% successful. It was really good. I couldn't believe how good the solution was. It actually improved the image quality by masses. I hadn't realized that I'd actually had a dewing problem from very, very early on. I think I was so excited at being able to get a result, get images, that I didn't look to improve on what I had. So the problem actually forced me to address an issue I had. I got a much crisper image, and the colours of stars or anything there, they were much more prominent, much more evident as well. So I was really, really pleased with this solution. But it took a while. It took quite a while to design and build and install that, but very, very worth it. So after all that construction, assembly and modification, what can the actual AllSky camera do? Well, here's the Keogram. Now the Keogram is, I can't remember, the Keo part, it's an Inuit word that means aurora, and serious aurora watchers or researchers, they use AllSky cameras. And what it is, the Keogram is a 1 pixel wide slice through the north-south axis. Every single exposure, every single image it takes a 1 pixel strip off it, and then it accumulates them in a timeline, and you get to see how forceful the aurora was throughout the night. Now in Scotland, in this part of Scotland, this is a pretty typical Keogram that you wake up to in the morning. You can see the twilight there. It's cutting through the north south, and then cloud all through the night until you get dawn, and it clears up, but it's still got cloud. Now on a clearer night, this is what you want, is you've got twilight, but you can see that you've got clear skies for at least 5 hours. A little bit of cloud. I've got another gap of about an hour. So I use it for that. You can also tell if your equipment has gone down during the night or anything like that. If you've got an aurora, because it's on the north-south axis, you can see you can see the strength or intensity of it on these and the color of it in there as well. But this is just, I just find it's a little slicer. It's a little slice of the sky during the night. This is a typical single image that you get, and you can see a tremendous amount with it. There's the individual stars. You can see asterisms. There's the plough. Now, on these images, north is to the right, south is to the left, east is to the top, and west is to the bottom. The horizon is the edge, and the center is the zenith directly above you. So it takes a wee while getting used to these orientations. So north is to the right, there's your plough, you use the 2 pointer stars, and you extend up there, and there's your pole star, the North Star. But I can see other constellations in here. Here, for example, is Cassiopeia. There is Perseus. Now, if you know your night sky, there is a faint fuzzy object in there. That's the double cluster of Perseus. And there is the Pegasus, the horse. Very, very interesting constellation at this time of year. Definitely want to learn how to use this as a signpost to find other interesting things. There's Pegasus, the square of the horse, up a couple of stars, up one, up two, and there's a faint fuzzy there. That's M31, the Andromeda Galaxy. You can also see the colours of stars. You can see some stars are pinpoint and some are more thicker than others. That's related to the brightness of the stars. The colours, you can see some are blue, some are white, some are more orangey red. What's this big bright thing here? Well, that's the planet Jupiter, so you can spot planets with it as well. And of course, look at that. That's the Milky Way going from the southwest horizon right overhead to the northwest horizon. It's absolutely fantastic at this time of year, by the way, if you've got good, clear, dark skies. And what's this on the right-hand side? It's this pinky mass with rays. Well, Lisa would have been out here. This is actually an aurora. There's your bright auroral arc, and there are some pink rays dancing off it. One single image. What a fantastic amount of detail and things to see. Wonderful, wonderful device, this. When you're using it, you go onto my website, and there'll be a link to that later. Go on my website. This is what you'll see, and there's a little menu box here. If you click on the zigzag, which is Cassiopeia, you'll get a constellation overlay. So you don't have to know your constellations. You don't have to remember them. It just overlays over the top of the stars right at this moment in time, and that will help you pick out your constellations and other interesting areas. Helps you navigate an AllSky camera image. This gives you can play the time lapses that you got for the last few days. This is the Keogram. This is star trails if you want to see star trails, and star trails are wonderful. Here's a time lapse, and this is a very quick time lapse. I've condensed this into seconds. So this will show you how the sky appears to move relative to the Earth. It's actually the Earth rotating, of course, but this will let you see it. You can also see the odd flash, and it's satellites crossing, cloud formation, cloud movement. Interesting in its own right. And there's the moon and the moon halo. Isn't that wonderful? Beautiful, beautiful star trails. When you do get a clear night, look at this. There's your pole star. Now the pole star, it's not quite at the celestial pole, but it's close enough. And all the other stars appear to rotate about it in concentric circles. You can clearly see here the different thicknesses of the lines. That reflects the different brightnesses. Look at the colours, white, blue, reddy orange. So these reflect the different types of stars. This bright thick line there, of course, is Jupiter skimming the horizon at this just now, because this would have been, oh no, when was this? 6th of January. Oh, that's way back in January, my goodness. And there, look at that, there was a fireball just coming off the northwestern edge there. These are beautiful. These are absolutely beautiful images. Now, I'm just reminding you now, I just see there's one question coming in the question and answers box. If you've got any questions or comments for me after I finish this talk, which won't be that long, get them in the question and answer box, and Dave will put them to me, and I'll be very, very willing to answer them. Satellites and the International Space Station. These are wonderful. You can go into Heavens Above website, and it tells you when bright satellites are going to appear, which part of the sky, tells you when the space station is going to come across. And you can actually, when you're looking at your images and your time lapses in the next day, you can go and have a look and see see if you can pick up any. So here's a very, very bright ISS pass. You'll see it just scooting past the left. And here's a slowed down close-up of the space station above Conan Bridge. It picks up aircraft as well. And these are fascinating. At first I thought I'd be annoyed at them. I'm not. I think they're wonderful. This was a search and rescue helicopter, and they come right over my house nowadays. And you can see its lights, its navigation light, and look at that bright light. And you can just actually see a bit of the shape of the search and rescue helicopter as it disappears off. This would have been taken over a period of a few minutes as it came over, or a couple of minutes as it came over my house. If you look down here, see these dots, red dots? These are flashing navigation lights from some other aircraft. Also, these little flashes, these are not aircraft, these are flaring satellites. This possibly a meteor just in there. So there's a lot of stuff. You look at star trails, you look at your time lapse, and you can pick up lots of things going on in your night sky. People often on Facebook report a possible UFO sightings. People, they've looked up the sky, they have seen a bright flash or a slow moving bright object. Now this is one, and I know Mick O'Donnell's on tonight. Mick might remember this one back in February, end of February this year. And a guy, I think he was from Bucky, and he reported a sighting, and he was saying it might be a UFO. And there was a lot of debate going on about whether it was or not. A few people that were ex-RAF guys were going, well, there's a lot of things go on in the sky that you guys, you civvies, don't know about. This one might be, Mick said, it might be a high altitude refueling exercise, which the military and different air forces practice. The AllSky camera was great. So I went into a couple of images about the time the guy said he'd seen this. So this was about 10 to 8 in the evening of February. And I could see streaks at the edge, the eastern edge, northeastern edge of the image. And I zoomed in, and here were two very close parallel tracks. And this tied in exactly with what Mick had said, was it was highly likely to be two high altitude military aircraft practicing refueling, and they were that high that they were reflecting like a satellite. So the poor fellow was disappointed, of course, that it wasn't a UFO, but I was particularly satisfied that the AllSky camera had clarified a possible UFO sighting. That's all. Really pleased with that. It does pick up bright meteors and fireballs, and this was one about 2 weeks ago, just over 2 weeks ago, and I spotted this image, and there you go. There is a bright flash about 10 degrees or so above the northwest horizon, and it was a huge fireball, and that's Ben Wivis actually just behind me in Conan Bridge, and that would have looked fantastic if you'd been up and seen it just 5 minutes past midnight, and you would have seen this streak and brighten as it headed into the mountain. Wonderful. But you see meteors and fireballs on this quite often. The other thing it picks up, of course, really well is the northern lights. Very often you can see the arc of a very, very bright streak, very defined streak of light. But this one, the activity had got very intense for a short while, and there were big rays. See these pink rays shooting up off the arc, about halfway up towards the zenith right above us. So wonderful. And when you look at these in a time lapse, of course, you can see the movement of the aurora. So wonderful. And this wasn't quite a bright, there was a moon there. So these were pretty strong, a pretty strong aurora for a very short period of time. But this helps clarify, again, whether there was an aurora or not. And of course, you get some unexpected visitors. We very often see beasties. Beautiful clouds here, by the way. Look at these lovely cirrus clouds. But we get beasties. Beasties are all kinds. You get winged beasties and leg beasties, big beasties and wee beasties. But for a while, we had a resident inside the dome. Henrietta the Spider. She was with us for a few months. She is no more. She was cleaned out in the summer there during our annual maintenance. And hopefully there will be no Henrietta spawn that appear, as I've managed to block up and mesh, hopefully, all the potential inlets. So there's Henrietta. She was with us for a long time, and we shared many photographs of her. But the most famous of all was the newly discovered Cat's Head Nebula. I was doing a live Perseid watch with the camera, and I went back and looked at some of the images, and here was the cat's head. This is actually my cat, Marty, wondering what on earth this device is up on her roof. She had a good peer in, got her selfie taken, and she was happy. So that's the kind of unexpected thing you can see on an AllSky camera. So anyway, that is that. I love to be doing things. What's my next project? Well, my next project is almost finished. This is a 3D printed model of a celestial sphere. Someone said this could be a form of astrolabe, which it could be. And this is what it does. It allows you to see what time the sun rises and sets at various times of the year at any latitude. It lets you see what constellations and stars and things are visible at any time. So we'll be using this in some of our astronomy observance sessions and some of our outreach to help teach people the night sky and some of the basic astronomical features and phenomena. It's a wonderful little device. So I've nearly finished that one, as I say. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. If you've got any questions for me, I hope you've submitted them. I'm sure Dave has certainly got some for me. Clear skies and keep looking up. Thank you.
Wow. Eric, thank you very much indeed for that very enlightening talk. I'm not sure if I could cope with the tribulations of a AllSky camera, but I don't need to because you've got one. I do want one of these orange things all the same, as soon as you've got that perfected.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw an image because you caught me out the other day.
I did, I know, yeah.
There was a lot more detail around some of the craters, wasn't there? And I went, that's a DSLR.
Absolutely. Wonderful, Eric. Thank you so much indeed. Now, there are a couple of questions. In fact, there are 4. Mick O'Donnell asks, is there no way you can set it to reorientate the images with north at the top, for example, as a default user setting?
Yeah, I can do that. However, because of the 69 format of computer screens and most software, if I do that, I end up with a narrow image. So I decided, no, I'll compromise, and to get the maximum amount of data or detail in my, the image I'm looking at, I decided to keep it in that orientation. So the answer is yes, Mick, I can, but it's the best way of presenting it to see the detail is horizontal. It is unfortunate, and yeah, like you, I'm a little bit OCD that way, but I had to overcome that.
Thank you for that very detailed answer, Eric. John Hanson asks, fascinating talk, thank you. His question, when I look at the camera now, there's a green cast to the cloud compared to what you've shown within the talk. So why is that, please?
Yeah, John, good to see you, John. John, I need to chap on your door. John just moved to Conan Bridge probably about a year ago. And I need to chap on his door. I'm not conscious of having met him. I've probably passed him in the street, but I bet I don't really know you, John. You've been a member for quite a while now. The green cast is one of the difficulties. If you notice when I was showing you the user interface, I can control the red and green balance easily on using the control interface. I can't control the green. So it's a little bit of a compromise. And when it's cloudy, I have a slight green cast, especially on the clouds. It's not bad, when I've got a clear sky. In fact, it's very good when I've got a clear sky. It's a dark blue, almost black background, and that's why you see the distinct colours of the stars. But yes, you get that cast. When I publish my pictures, if I've got a little bit of time, I just put them through Lightroom or a very elemental image software, and I can take the green cast out, and it's really easy. But unfortunately, the user interface for this particular setup, I just can't get all the green cast out. I've tried to do that, but it then goes too red or too blue, and that's an even worse cast than just having the green one. So I hope that answers you, John.
Thank you. Christine McMillan from what I suspect is AAS, Aberdeen Astronautical Society. Is there a gap between each observation so that you miss a meteor?
Hi Christine, good to hear from you. Yes, currently I have the exposure time set up to, I think it's 40 seconds. And there is a gap. There is a pause of, I can't remember exactly, but let's just say it's 0.2 of a second or something, so that it allows my computer to buffer and shunt the image. I've minimized it as best I can. It's another one where the balance is, I want to capture as much of what goes on in the night sky as I can, but equally I don't want to clog up and confuse the processor. So you need that little gap. So it's a good question. You obviously know your stuff. You obviously know your stuff, Christine. So it's a little buffer that I have built in. And if there was a meteor in that 0.2 of a second or so, yes, I would miss it. So, you take your chances, as you say. It's the meteor watchers, the ones who've got proper meteor cams, they are actually continual video cams, Dave or Christine. So they don't miss a thing. But this one captures the meteor as a streak, whereas the video cam meteor boys, you can actually see the path of and the brightening and breakup of meteors live, so to speak.
Thank you. And finally, Neil Weston, it's not really a question. He says, thanks, Eric. He's working on his own camera, and it was very useful to see your approach. So,
great, Neil. And I realised Neil messaged me probably about a fortnight ago now, and I said I'd get back to him. Apologies, Neil, I haven't. But I will now, because
you've on the spot. On the spot. Well, that concludes the questions, Eric. And once again, thank you very much for the effort you've put into that. And we'll see what the AllSky camera produces in the next few months.
You will. It's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for having me on.
Most welcome. So questions are finished, and we now move on to our monthly club news and photographs with our illustrious Pauline Macrae. Pauline.
Thank you, Dave, and thank you, Eric. That was really interesting. I didn't understand half of it, but I do like the images. Right, so good evening, everyone. Tonight's constellation is going to be about Pegasus. And I hope you noticed that Eric mentioned Pegasus when he was talking about the stars or the constellations that you can see on the AllSky camera. So Pegasus is, of course, the white-winged horse born from the blood of Medusa after she was slain by Perseus, and then used to rescue Andromeda from Cetus, the sea monster. Now, very strangely, the horse appears upside down in the sky. And I cannot find a reason why. There doesn't seem to be a reason why. And it does seem a bit strange because all the other constellations of the Northern Hemisphere are, of course, the right way up. The most distinctive feature of Pegasus is, of course, the asterism of the Great Square of Pegasus, as you can see here. There are actually very few naked eye stars in the Great Square of Pegasus. These ones you see here could well be up to magnitude 6.5 or 7, which of course is beyond naked eye visibility. But the fact that there are only a few naked eye stars in the Great Square of Pegasus makes it very useful for doing star counts, for looking at light pollution in your area. So these numbers in red are actually the magnitudes. They've just left out the point in the middle. So the brightest star in the square of Pegasus is magnitude 4.4. There aren't any brighter stars than that. So stars now up to magnitude 5.5 were joined with 3 purple numbers, and these are, as you can see, magnitude 5.1 to 5.5. And then we've got 6 numbers in blue, which are magnitudes up to 6. So have a look at in your own garden or in your own area and see how many stars you can actually count in the Great Square of Pegasus. Now, finding the constellation can actually be quite tricky, especially if you've got roofs of houses around. And I find that finding the square is actually quite difficult from my back garden because of where it's situated in the sky. And I found this particular way of using various signposts in the sky once again. So we look at Polaris and we draw a straight line from Polaris through the last star in the W shape of Cassiopeia, move the same distance again, and you'll come to the Great Square of Pegasus. And the thing to remember is that the square is always bigger than you think it is, especially if it's the first time you're looking for the square. Now, the 4 main stars forming the square are of similar brightnesses between magnitudes 2 and 3. But this one, Alpheratz, does not actually belong to Pegasus. It's assigned to Andromeda. So this is the start, and there should be another line here. This is the start of the Andromeda constellation. However, the square would be incomplete unless we counted this star too. So this is the brightest one at 2.1. Shiat is this star here, and it means upper arm. So you could say that that was the upper arm of the horse. It's a red giant, and it looks definitely red in binoculars. It's a variable star, so it varies between magnitude 2.3 and 2.7. And when it is at 2.3, it becomes the brightest star in Pegasus, discounting Alpheratz, of course. Macrae means saddle. That's this one here. So this would be the beginning of the saddle. It has a magnitude of 2.5, and Algenib is the faintest with a magnitude of 2.8. And this one means the side. So it's at this point here. Now, Pi is worth finding with binoculars because it's a nice double star, and you can actually see the 2 stars very well in binoculars. And you find it by first finding Shiat, and you know when you've got the right star because it's a reddish color. move along to this one here, double that distance, and you'll get to pi. And it's really a lot easier than you think it might be. And just of note, this is 51 Pegasi, so it's actually quite a famous star, because it was the first star that was discovered to have a planet orbiting around it, and that was back in 1995, so that's a long time ago now. So these lines of stars here form the front legs, and then we've got this line of stars here. This is the neck, and this is the body of the horse. And Enif means nose, and you can see the star here. So it's near enough on the nose, and this would be in the position of the eye. Enif is actually a triple star. You can use binoculars to find its companion, which is an 8.4 magnitude star, but from my relatively light polluted garden, I could not see it. But if you've got a small telescope, then you should find that star, plus also another one, but which is magnitude 11, but you would need your telescope for that one, and that's very close to Enif. But Enif is really useful as another signpost, because not far away is M15, which is a beautiful globular cluster. So once again, move from this star through Enif, half the distance again, and you'll come to M15. And the really brilliant thing about M15 is here is a deep sky object you can see with binoculars. It'll just look like a small fuzzy star, and there's M15. It's beautiful. And a small telescope will see it as a misty patch, whereas a large telescope, like the one we have in the dome, will resolve the stars round about and quite a long way into a compact core. There are two galaxies worth looking for. NGC 7331 is a nice nearly edge-on spiral. You'll need a telescope for it because it's a magnitude 10 object. And then we have NGC 7479, which is a really interesting galaxy. It looks a beautiful galaxy. So we have a barred spiral with these tightly wound arms in this backward S shape. But contrary to your instincts, it actually rotates in an anti-clockwise direction. And you would need a telescope to view this. But there's a bit more to the propeller galaxy than you might think, because it has a supermassive black hole in its center, so it's an active galaxy. And the supermassive black hole is producing a jet in the form of radiation. And if you look carefully, the radio radiation is actually bending in the opposite direction to the propeller galaxy. So it rotates the opposite way around, so in a clockwise direction, which is the reverse of the propeller galaxy. And astronomers think, well, maybe something merged with the galaxy that upset the radio radiation at some point. Who knows? And something else that's rather interesting is Stephan's quintet. And this is a visual grouping of 5 galaxies forming the first compact group of galaxies ever found. Now you might look at this and think, there are only 4 galaxies, but if you have a look at this one here, there are 2 bright cores indicating there are 2 galaxies here. Overall magnitude 13, 14, so you need a really big telescope in order to see anything at all. But again, they have an interesting story to tell. So this galaxy here, you can see has a long tail of stars, and you can see that there, and you can see how it points towards this little galaxy up here. And astronomers believe that this galaxy passed behind these galaxies, and its gravitational pull pulled this trail of stars and gas outwards towards this galaxy. And then we have these 2 very close together galaxies here. And you'll notice in this image, we've got a lot of what looks like stars surrounding both of these galaxies. And you can see it very well in this visual and X-ray light image. So what seems to have happened is that this little galaxy here has plunged its way through these galaxies in this close vicinity, and has set up this huge intergalactic shockwave. So the galaxy went through with millions of kilometers an hour, really fast. And that was enough to compress the gas. And by compressing a lot of gas, you end up with a lot of starbirth. So that's what you're seeing here, and also in this area here. And lastly, we've got this galaxy down here, which we can only see half of. But you'll notice it's a lot more detailed. You can actually see stars in this galaxy, whereas you can't really see individual stars in these galaxies here. Okay, so you can see some of them here. These would be the really big ones that are being born. And when astronomers went back to the redshift data, they realized that actually this galaxy is closer. It's not part of these galaxies here. It's not part of Stephan's quintet. This one is thought to be about 40 million light years away, whereas these galaxies are about 300 million light years away. So that takes Stephan's quintet to Stephan's quartet, or at least it would, apart from this galaxy, which must have some sort of tie with this one. And it apparently is the same distance away, 300 million light years, as these. So we can now go back to Stephan's quintet. It's just a slightly different grouping of galaxies than was first thought. And then we've got Einstein's cross. And this is a gravitationally lensed quasar, which is located exactly behind a galaxy. And that's the galaxy there. So the galaxy is a single concentration of mass, which acts like a lens. And this lensing effect is the result of space-time being curved around massive objects. So the galaxy here is acting as this massive object. And then the image of the background source, which in this case is the quasar, can then be distorted and magnified in the process. So the light of this distant quasar is redirected around the galaxy, and in this case produces multiple images of the background quasar. And it's in the shape of a cross, which is why it's called Einstein's cross. And of course, it was Einstein that first predicted that gravitational lensing could actually occur. So here is Pegasus, nice and easily placed in the sky. It's not quite as high up as this star map might suggest. Now, I really like the star map. I think it's very clear, but it is set for a lower latitude. So we don't see this part of the sky just here, and we do see more of the northern part of the sky. So that will take Pegasus down a little bit. But you can see how this star, Alpheratz, is the one that's shared with Andromeda. And as Eric pointed out, count 1, 2, and then 1, 2 fainter stars, and there we have the Andromeda galaxy. So it's this star is a really good signpost to find the Andromeda galaxy. And then we have Jupiter and Saturn, still prominently placed in the sky, but notice how much further they're getting towards the southwest. So maybe another couple of months before they disappear. Now, Mercury, this image is for tomorrow morning. You might just catch a glimpse if you're also looking for the new moon here, or not the new moon, a very fine crescent moon, a very old moon. It says the best time is about 6:42 in the morning. but Mercury is fading fast and it's dropping to the eastern horizon very quickly. So another couple of days and then you won't be able to see it. Venus, still very difficult to see. You still need a clear southwestern horizon, but it's very good visibility at about this time here, which is about 10 to 5 in the evening. So you can have a go and it will get better. And I've got a good photograph to show you a bit later. Mars, I better just say that the crescent moon is nearby Venus on the 7th and 8th. So that's another opportunity to find Venus in the sky. Mars is still not visible, and I've already spoken about Jupiter and Saturn. So there is another planet left that you can, in theory, see with the naked eye, and that's Uranus. And this might be the time to look for it. So we've got the Pleiades, Aries, and Cetus the sea monster, and there is Uranus. Now on November the 4th to the 5th, Uranus will be at opposition. So this means it's going to be visible all night and will be at its highest point at midnight. It's also closest to the Earth for 2021 and therefore at its brightest. So it has a magnitude of about 5.6. Therefore, you can see it's at the limits of naked eye visibility. The trouble is, you also need a very dark sky in order to see it. And if you've got a very dark sky, then you've got loads of stars. So picking out Uranus is extremely difficult. You need signposts. So the thing to do is to look for Pleiades, find Aries, and then that will take you down to this part of Cetus. Menkaure is magnitude 2.5, so that's nice and bright, easy to find. And then this star Mu is around magnitude 4. So you will need a dark sky sight. Now, I'm not suggesting you look for Uranus with your naked eye, because it is tricky, but certainly with binoculars, if you use this star and then find these two other stars here as part of this Y shape, and this is a better image because the star magnitudes are slightly more accurate. So if that's 4, then this could be 4.5. And then if you take a straight line from Mu all the way through these two stars, then just to the right of it should be Uranus. And notice that there aren't any other bright stars like this one in this vicinity, apart from this one over here. So give it a go. Be aware, though, that as the month goes on, Uranus will move away from this star. And then it'll start returning after the end of January. See what you can find. That's a challenge of the month. There is the Leonid meteor shower going on, but as you may also have seen, the full moon is on the 19th of this month. So it's going to interfere with the meteor shower. So it's unlikely you would see an awful lot. There is a build-up up to the peak night, which is the 17th, 18th, and then it'll gradually reduce in numbers, but you're only going to see around 15 an hour anyway. You have to wait till the early hours of the morning before Leo rises in order to be able to see any of the meteors, because this is the radiant, that's where the meteors appear to emanate. They tend to be fast meteors with fine trains. And then there are 2 comets around. The chances of actually seeing either of them with the naked eye is very small. This one you won't. This is 67P Churyumov-Gerasimenko, which is why it's called 67P. And this is a really nice image. It was taken by this chap in Puerto Rico. So we've got M35 open star cluster in Gemini, and then a more distant open star cluster in Gemini called NGC 2158. And the comet is this gorgeous greeny color. 67P, by the way, is the one that Rosetta visited, which is why I'm talking about it just now. It will pass close to Pollux, which is in Gemini, on the 7th of November. And this is the time it's at its brightest, but disappointingly, it's only magnitude 9. However, if we get up to the observatory for an observing session, or if you happen to have a telescope, then it's something that would be worth looking for. This is the finder chart, which I'll include in Stargazing Pi for any of those who are really enthusiastic with their telescopes to look for it. But unfortunately, we're not going to see it with binoculars. And then there's this other comet called Comet Leonard. And it's only magnitude 11 at the moment, but it's expected to brighten to perhaps 5.5. Some authorities say it could even brighten to magnitude 2.5, which would be really good. And then we would definitely see it with the naked eye. But 5.5, that's well within the reach of binoculars. So it would be worth looking for with binoculars. But finding it is quite tricky. This is October, going into November here. And initially, you can only see it in the early morning hours. And then you should start to be able to see it in the evening, but very early on in the evening. So you could see it evening and morning at the same time. And then it seems to become slightly more evening, but it remains early evening. And during December, it just zooms across the sky. And then it disappears from the northern hemisphere and turns up in the southern hemisphere. So something to think about, maybe another challenge. I'll include this with the Stargazing Pi too. Okay, a little bit of club news. We're going to have ad hoc observing sessions this month, partly because the weather doesn't look terribly good. So that means going for a night when it is actually clear. And also because we're short of supervisors at weekends this month, something to do with the rugby, apparently. And there's going to be an online talk by a professor of atmospheric physics. So he's going to talk about the atmospheres, weather and climate of other planets in the solar system, which should be very interesting. Now, it does happen to be at the same night as the Aberdeen Astronomical Society meeting, but it is beforehand. So if you want an evening of online astronomy, next Tuesday is going to be a perfect time. We are hoping to produce a calendar, and we're going to be using your photographs as long as you're happy with that. Because there are so many, we've decided to restrict the photographs to just Highlands Astronomical Society photographs, but we are open to suggestions. So if you feel that we should include other societies' photographs from this year, then please let me know, and I will certainly consider some. The cost, well, might be around £7.50, but that depends on the number ordered, whether any other hidden costs, etc., etc. The main constraint at the moment is time. I'm hoping I'm going to have time to do it, but it may end up by being something that we do for next year. And this is a forward notice about the Christmas quiz, which is going to be run by Sigma, and we're going to be part of it along with other North of Scotland clubs. It was such fun last year that we are delighted to have been to have a chance of being part of the quiz again, and for Sigma to invite us. It's going to be run the same way, using breakout rooms to discuss answers amongst your team members. The team can be up to a maximum of 5 people, so think about who you would like to be with and the name of your team. And Pete says that if you want to actually meet at somebody's house as a team and join from one device, then that's absolutely fine, as long as, of course, we're still allowed to do that. You can join as a single registrant, and Pete will put you with other single registrants. Sounds a bit like a dating website, but I can assure you it's not. Or you might be put with a team that doesn't have 5 people, but you won't be on your own. And Pete will try and even it out as much as possible so you don't get terribly uneven teams. The information about registering your team or to join on your own and to be put with others, that will be sent out in November. And as soon as I get it, I'll pass it on to you and then pass it to you again a little bit closer to the time. And the most important thing of all, because it's being run by Sigma, it's going to take place on a Friday. So that's going to be Friday, the 3rd of December, and it will replace our Tuesday meeting that month, which would have been Tuesday the 7th. Now, one of the things that we like to try and do as a society, and all societies are the same, we like to try and help others. So Eric has become a real expert with his 3D printing and the way he can design all the bits and pieces required. So this is an adapter made by Eric, which allows Lisa to use her Star Adventurer on her EQ5 tripod. And this tripod is very much sturdier than a normal tripod you would use for astrophotography or photography. And you really need something that stays still while you're doing astrophotography. So this is it. It's all 3D printed, tested, and in working order, even with its personalized spanner and tartan strap. I would call that a ribbon. Here we have your gallery of photographs, and we're going to start with this beautiful double rainbow from Jerry that he took yesterday. And I like to think of rainbows as portents of hope. So a double rainbow, a double portion of hope, especially while we have COP26 going on for the next couple of weeks. Now you've seen this photograph because Eric showed it to you during his talk. I've been trying to work out where the fireball or whether it was just a sporadic or whether it was actually from a meteor shower, because in the middle of October, there are the South Taurids happening, and the Taurids, which is just a very minor meteor shower, they're notorious for producing fireballs. But looking at the constellations, Milky Way, I reckon Taurus would be around here, which isn't quite where the path of this meteor would come from. So, don't know. Right, flaring satellite, you can tell because it starts faint, gets brighter, and then it goes faint again. And there is a little meteor, starts faint and gets bright, and that's it. And we can see Orion already here. This, now I've been going on about Venus being way too low, really difficult to see, and yet here we have a beautiful photograph of Venus and the crescent moon by Dave. So all I can say is, well done, Dave, for actually managing to get this. But it's such an atmospheric photograph. It's really beautiful. We haven't had a lot of aurora this month. Lisa might dispute that, but we certainly had a faint aurora on the 18th, and then there was another one on the 29th, and Lisa also managed to capture the Milky Way in this photograph. And then on the 30th, which was Saturday, we were promised there was going to be a really strong aurora to be seen halfway down the country. It was even on BBC Weather, and we just had to wait for it, or wait for the coronal mass ejection to hit our magnetosphere, and it could happen anytime, Saturday night, Sunday morning. So while Eric was waiting for the aurora, he took this photograph of the Milky Way. This, by the way, is cloud. And you can just about see the Milky Way here. And this is very much what is taken, and that's your image. But as soon as you start processing it, look at all the stars. It's astonishing. He hasn't added anything. He's simply taken out all the information that was there originally. And there you can see cloud, by the way. but you'll notice it's a lot harder to see constellations. There is Cygnus. There is the coat hanger. Can you see that? It looks a bit like a J. And that's Delphinus, the dolphin, the leaping dolphin. But it's much more difficult to find Cygnus. You can see the coat hanger quite nicely. But I'm always astounded at the number of stars there are in the skies above us. And then the aurora began. So this is the start of it. And then it became brighter and it really took off. And in the short time that it was really noticeable, I fell asleep and missed it. So it's really frustrating. And then it died down again. And it seems, and it didn't get any better. And it seems that what sparked this aurora was actually, excuse me, a coronal mass ejection that left the sun a little bit earlier, that hit the magnetosphere, the Earth's magnetosphere, a glancing blow, and just produced a small aurora. And the main part, well, there was something that occurred during the day, but actually it didn't come to the fantastic aurora that everyone had been expecting. And again, that was probably the CME hitting the edge of the Earth's magnetosphere, and just therefore it didn't come to very much. But this looks like a really good season for the aurora. Lots of sunspots on the sun, and they are producing flares, coronal mass ejection. So keep watching out for the aurora. Now, this is a really good photograph with a mobile phone. If the aurora is bright enough, you can see it, you can photograph it with your mobile phone. So you might not have any fancy camera equipment, doesn't matter. Go outside and see if you can get it with your mobile phone and then send the pictures to us. So well done, John, for this. And here we have some images from Lisa. This is particularly beautiful. And this is the one that she has called her rare alligator auroral photograph, and you can see why. And this is the aurora taken by Dennis, who lives close to Tame, it's Port Mahomac. Clear northern horizon, very little light pollution. So absolutely glorious pictures. And that same night, he decided he would do a little bit of deep sky photography. So this is M74 Spiral Galaxy in Pisces. And I was really surprised to see this because it's the propeller galaxy in Pegasus that I have already told you about. And then we have the bubble nebula in Cassiopeia. So at the center of the bubble, there is a very hot, bright, massive star, probably a Wolf-Rayet star, producing so much radiation that it's just blowing away the surrounding gas that you can see here and forming this bubble that is surrounding the star itself. So, thank you, everyone. Good luck being an awesome astronomer.
Well, Pauline, thank you so much for that. Inspiring, absolutely inspiring. We need to get out under these dark skies and take these photographs for next month.
Definitely.
Fantastic.
Thanks.
So, thanks once again to our contributors today, Eric and Pauline, and to the 30 people who came and listened to us. That's always appreciated, and we really hope to see you at the observatory one night under these dark skies and see the stars that Pauline so ably told us about. So it just remains for me to close the meeting by saying thank you again to everyone, clear skies, and I'll see you next month.